Feel free to, we know that this is your short window between classes, and we're so grateful that you made the time to be here. And I know President Wexler is really excited to be able to really just have open conversations with you for the start of many more to come. Feel free to also get up and move and get food as you would need. Just a quick introduction for those that don't know me. My name is Yanni Yip. I'm Dean of Students. I know many of you by name. I worked obviously very closely with Michael Sano, and I'm just very excited to be able to be here and to continue the partnership and the evolution of really making sure that ACTCM and the integration continues, in addition to looking at the camera for all the CIIS students who are not ACTCM that are joining us. As you know, this is our town hall, again, the start of many, to formally introduce to you Judy Wexler as our new president of CIIS. She's going to be here to answer a lot of the questions that have been submitted in advance, and also to balance out, we want to give you the opportunity to ask questions of her while you're here too. So, without further ado.
Okay, so as Annie said, I'm Judy Wexler. I started introducing myself to people, and then too many people came in. So I've been at CIIS for 14 years. This is my 15th year. And for most of that time was academic vice president and provost. I really wanted us to start our town hall program for students at ACTCM because I feel like many of us who live and work, and I do sometimes feel like I live on Mission Street, have not gotten over here enough. And so I want to really be starting the year with making sure that we are in interaction with the people who are at ACTCM and at this campus. I know this room because I come over for the quarterly faculty meetings. One more thing that I want to say about my own background that you may not know, for the last 6 years I have been on the Acupuncture Accrediting Agency. So I just went off the ACOM, the machine went on. We would really like the accrediting agency to hold the thought that there is a ACTCM's seat. So that we're always represented. And of course, there's no seat that's dedicated to a particular school. But I need to say that when we started talking about the merger, and the commission and commission members heard about it, everybody was very interested to see how it was going to work to take two very different schools and bring them together. And everybody kept on telling me how important ACTCM has been in the history of acupuncture education in the United States, and how strong the program is and how strong the alumni are. So it's unusual to hear that kind of acclaim coming from the members of the accrediting agency commission. But I really want you all to know how highly the members of the profession hold this school and what it's done in terms of education. And so as we entered into the merger, for me, I entered in knowing that this is the importance of ACTCM. And also with a number of years of discussion about acupuncture education and what the future, how we envision the future for this very important field. And so I think a lot of the questions that we address on this campus were the same questions that the commission was addressing, which is how do we think about the role of this profession as we look at the whole health and wellness medical area in the United States, and how do we help move this profession to take its place amongst that array of professions that are working sometimes together and sometimes not so much together in terms of providing health, wellness, and medical attention for people in this country. So it was exciting to go from talking about that on the outside, because I'm a sociologist, and then also talking about it from the inside as we welcome ACTCM into partnership with us. So I'm happy to be here and expect to be spending more time here over the next 2 years.
So the format that we were thinking of using was, we had questions submitted in advance. There's 2 that are about new administration. The general topics fell into the categories of administration, ACTCM specific, finances, including budget questions, and student and community stays. So there are 2 that were just about the administration and the transition that we're going to ask those, and then wanted to open it up to your questions here to make sure that your questions can get answered, and some of those may tie in then with some of the ACTCM and other questions that we have further on. Okay, so the first administration question, why were students, faculty, and staff not given the opportunity to interview the new CIIS president as with other candidates? Why the sudden need to promote the interim president, who was retiring, to the permanent position?
So the decision about who the president is actually a board decision. So Board of Trustees have 2 legally mandated responsibilities. One is to maintain financial oversight of the institution to make sure that we are being financially responsible. The other is to appoint and evaluate the president. And so we went through a whole big search process. And when the board decided that the final candidates, the names of the final candidates were appropriate to appoint as president, and it was their decision to ask me to continue. I've been here for 14 years, so for most people at CIIS and many people at ACTCM have gotten to know me quite well over that period of time, and certainly board members got to know me over that period of time. So they did not feel a need to go through a whole interview process. I had announced in September of 2016 my plan to retire at the end of June. And I had this wonderful plan for retirement. Retire, I was going to relax, I was going to go on a wonderful trip, I was going to be able to spend more time in China with my daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren, and hang out more with my grandchildren here, and my husband, who really has not seen me for the last 8 months. And so it was a great plan. And but when the board asked me to step in as interim president, I said that I would be willing to postpone retirement initially for 1.5 years, and now I said that I will spend the next 2 years working with this community and getting CIIS as a whole into really good shape so that we can go out and do a search for a new president, and that we're doing that from a position of strength, not trying at the last minute to go out and hire somebody. So that's the plan now, and we will, I will continue working with everybody to continue to strengthen the school, and in spring semester, we'll start interviewing search consultants so that we have the time to make an informed decision about who is the best firm to help us really seek the right president. Presidential searches typically start being active around the end of August. And there's a lot of preliminary work that go into that process. We weren't able to do that in the last year. We started really actively searching in December, which was really late. And so we're gonna take our time and move forward from a position of strength. And I'm going to feed into the next question as I continue to answer the first one, so that in getting this school ready over the next 2 years to have a new president, one of the things that I'm working on is really building a strong leadership team. And I do mean team, because in the past, CIIS functioned in a under a format in which everybody either reported directly to the president or they reported to me as provost. I had something like somewhere between 15 and 20 direct reports, which is not a good situation, because basically all I could do was meet with people all day long, every day of the week. And so trying to build a structure in which nobody will have more than 6 to 8 direct reports, and we are diffusing some of that responsibility and bringing people together into a very active, mouthy president's cabinet. And I say that not to disparage the president's cabinet, as 2 of the members are sitting here, both Yanni and Machine are part of it, but I really want to highlight that creating an atmosphere in which people feel that they can voice their analysis and their recommendation about how the school moves forward, that people can disagree with each other, including disagreeing with me, and that we can come to what we believe is the best kind of decision. And that can only happen if you, one, create an atmosphere in which people feel confident that if you disagree with the president, it's okay. You know, I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to lose my temper. I don't expect people to always agree with me. I can change my mind, so I don't always agree with myself, the reality is. And that we bring strong, knowledgeable people together. And so as part of that, I moved very quickly to appoint a new provost and to appoint deans for the 2 schools that did not have deans. And we had to, because we were moving quickly, we did an internal search. We got asked people to make recommendations for provost and deans. And we got a large number of recommendations. We then asked those people if they were interested. Many of them said no. And then I appointed a committee to review all of those people who were interested, who had been nominated. And that committee made some recommendations to me. Ving was one of the people that was on that committee. I listened in to their conversation without participating really, but I wanted to hear what the analysis was of each person. And I think we've appointed a very strong group of people. And in June, I announced those. So Liz Bevan is the new provost. And she is relatively new at CIIS. She has been working with us for the last 1.5 years in developing a program in Waldorf and integral education. Prior to working with us at CIIS, she was president of the Rudolf Steiner College, which is in Sacramento, and it's a school devoted to preparing people for teaching at Waldorf schools. So she's somebody who has devoted most of her career in terms of really thinking about education and how do we best educate people, to make a difference, and to take one system of education and look at how do you apply it in other kinds of settings. If you know about Waldorf education, it's thrived in the United States as private education, and now it's looking at how to move into public education. And Liz has been working with school district in Watts and a number of other places about how do you then take this system and address the needs of a highly diverse urban setting. And I think one of the challenges for CIIS is how do we take systems that have developed somewhat on their own? And I think the whole area of acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine education is a system of medicine and a system of education that started in China, Japan, Vietnam, Korea, societies that are very different from us that got moved here and now we're moving it into a much broader kind of educational setting. And how do we make that kind of adjustment? How do we think about not only, and it's not about ACTCM learning how to do things differently, it's about all of us thinking about how do we do things differently and how do we take advantage of the new possibilities that arise because we have these very different kinds of systems coming together. And I think Liz's background will be very helpful in helping us to do that. And then the deans of the schools, Kathy Littles, who's been at CIIS for a long time, teaches in the School of Undergraduate Studies and directs a program in the School of Consciousness and Transformation, and Nicole Zapian, who's been in the School of Professional Psychology and Health, that those two in collaboration with Bing and with Michelle Bing, who's the Dean of our School of Undergraduate Studies, will together become a council of deans and will have a much more kind of hands-on direct way to look at what's the ways in which we can collaborate, how do we work together differently than we have in the past. And I think that's one of the things that's been missing, is the people who are more directly responsible for the education that we provide in each of these schools, having an opportunity to come together and really think through how do we collaborate in new and exciting and different ways. So that's what we are administrating.
And just so people know, the question that had been submitted was, it appears that a new provost was hired. When did this happen and why hasn't it been announced? Can you share any insight and details about this person's new person's background, and what other high-level positions are you looking to fill? And so
I am hopeful that all of our high-level positions are filled. And my focus now is really continuing to build that team so that people are working together really well and collaborating in ways that hasn't been the case in the past. So I'm actually going on vacation September 2nd. It was part of my retirement plan. Was this wonderful trip to Mongolia and Eastern Siberia with a group of friends, and I am still going. And so getting the leadership team in place and having everybody work together really well so that they can manage just fine, without me. And I think one of the tasks of a president is to have a strong group of people in place who can function without the president being there all the time. And so we've got some very, very talented people. And we're also very strong willed people. I'm excited.
I think at this
And I'll still have the email.
We'd love to open up questions to this group to make sure that your questions get answered here, and then we can return to some of the other questions that had been submitted. And just in case anyone was curious, these were all submitted since we're able to submit anonymously, and the questions were compiled and shared with Judy only half an hour before the session, so she had an idea of what questions might be asked. Any questions within this group?
Yami, you mentioned that you would like to cover the questions coming from students, raised at a larger picture of university. Then you will have questions specifically about ACTCM. Is that the plan,
So I think this is where just in terms of balance of time, because we know that there's some students that need to go to class at 1 o'clock. We wanted to make sure that the students who took the time to attend here would be able to get their questions answered. And then we would move after any questions here to the ACTCM specific also. And then the categories again would be ACTCM, budget and finance, and student and community space. And happy to start with some ACTCM.
There was a question that was asked of me, and I'll state it anonymously. It was regarding ACTCM taking advantage of wellness opportunities at CIIS, and the wellness fee that was recently added in fall, how that would, how ACTCM students would be able to take advantage of the opportunities at CIIS.
Jim, do you want to try that?
I would be thrilled to. So, as you may have heard, and the announcement again is in an email that we are just waiting to get those final touches to be able to go out. There's going to be a wellness fee that's going to be levied on all students starting this fall. It's going to be $55 a semester for each semester that you enroll. And the commitment behind the group that has been really steering this is to make sure that all students have access. We know that such a large proportion of our school is not at Mission Street, and we want to ensure that whether you're here at either of the ACTCM campuses or a student who is through one of our online programs living overseas or living on the other side of the country, you have access to our services. So what we're rolling out is just a wide array of different services for which we're hoping that you feel interested and comfortable in connecting with any one of them. For counseling, we have one-on-one counselors for our counseling center, and we will have a location here at ACTCM, specifically at the Jaharo campus that Li-Sheen was able to identify, where we're just going to look to see what dates and times would be appropriate so that you would be able to make use of the counseling service. And specifically right now we have it scheduled where each student is entitled to 8 free sessions of counseling, 8 free 1-hour sessions of counseling each academic year. Similarly, for students that are out of state, that we are working on building and finalizing our distance program where we'd be able to do telepsychology. Within California, there's no problem. Within most states, we're working on it and it shouldn't be a problem. There are very few states which by law, they actually do not allow telepsychology. And that is one piece that we're looking to address. But at this stage, again, we would say for the vast majority, I think 93% of the collective CIIS students live in California and would be able to get access to that very easily. We also will have health coaching in partnership with the Integral Health Leadership Program, where all students will be able to participate in partnering with a health coach to be able to really look at what their wellness needs are and to have someone follow up, help with accountability, and devise a plan based off of what your needs are. And that again can be in person here at ACTCM, at Mission Street, or anywhere else. We're going to continue with Tai Chi. Sinead, I think, has been doing Tai Chi here, and she's being under the yoga at CIIS umbrella, and we're looking to continue bringing other movement type courses here. There's going to be the email that articulates all of this, but again, for us to underscore is we are really committed to making sure that all students have access regardless of where you are, and that there's a wide breadth of services so that if you are not interested in one, that you still have others that can make, really make do and, hopefully be accountable for the fee that you're going to pay.
Thank you.
I had a question just about the fee. So it's $55 per semester. How come we see $232 on the wellness fee? On our
232. I will have to look into that.
You should not?
Yes.
Okay.
Derek, did you see that in yours too?
I think you're totaling them all up, which includes the technology fee.
No, but it said health and wellness fee. Remember?
Yeah, I'd have to look at it. I think it's only 55 last time I checked.
Okay, Pete, you will definitely look into that.
Yeah, there was a total, but it was just a new fee that came up.
Okay.
So you pretty much answered the
Yeah.
question.
And just so you know, we're trying to be really transparent with the fees too, because we're being protective of so many schools are going to fees as ways of masking tuition increases. That is definitely not what CIIS is interested in doing. So we want to be transparent with any new fee, and we don't foresee any new fees. I haven't heard of any new fees in the future.
This is it.
That we will be very upfront as to this is what it is going to pay for.
Thank you.
Since we talked about the room, I think for quite a long time, our students want a room that you could go for meditation. You could go for, quiet time. And now we have a designated room for you. And that room is in the Harrow, where a regional DOM director's office is. It's really, quite big, spaceful. It has windows. To me, it's important to have windows. And that room is available. So we're going to make that for counseling or for students use only as wellness room. And how you're going to decorate it, that's up to you. All talk to student council. So we have that room ready for students.
Thank you, Lucy. And for those of you that might be inspired by some questions, I'll go ahead and start with another ACTCM question, and feel free to jump in after also. So there are two questions that are similar. Changing the ACTCM calendar as well as the CIIS, SUS, and other schools doesn't make sense to students. Can you explain the reasoning? And then the second part to someone else's question. The change of quarters to semesters has left us with a break between summer and fall of just over a week. You may not know, but we take comprehensive exams, which happen at the end of the first week, leaving us with just 3 days between the exams and the start of the next semester. What can be done about this?
So when we first started talking about the merger, one of the things that we talked to the Department of Education, so you probably don't know, that for us to, I'm trying to think how to explain it. So in preparation for the merger, there were a number of agencies that needed to approve us merging. Our accrediting agency, the California Attorney General, another California agency, the Bureau of Post-Secondary Private Education, and the U.S. Department of Education. And each one of those agencies had different regulations, different timelines, different reporting, and each one of them was absolutely essential. Okay? So the U.S. Department of Education is essential because that's how we have the right to give federal financial aid. So all loans come from that. And when we talked to the U.S. Department of Education, they said, you can't have a school in which you have some people on the semester system and some people on the quarter system. And we came back to them and said, but there's other schools we think that have some people on the semester system and some people on the quarter system. And they said, we don't care. We're telling you that we will not approve the merger if you have a semester and a quarter calendar. And so then we looked at, so what do we do? Do we go from semester to quarter, or do we go from quarter to semester? Okay. And for those of us who have been on quarter systems in the past, I went through graduate school on the quarter system, and I have to say I hated it because every time, by the time I figured out what I was going to write my paper on, the semester, the quarter was almost over. So academically, we determined that the semester system was better in terms of academics. The quarter system, however, had some advantages in terms of calendar. And so we looked at how we could make the two work. And we recognized that there are some problems in terms of the semester system, particularly as it relates to the schools and the programs that go year-round. And so we said we would assess what happened, how we managed with ACTCM and SUS on one calendar, SPPH and SCT on another calendar, and how the semester system was working for both for ACTCM and SUS. It's actually working better for SUS than what we had before, because they were kind of hovering screen. But we don't have a lot of choice because the US Department of Education will not allow us to have both quarters and semesters. So, there's not that many ways to build 3 semesters into a 52-week calendar and deal with things like Christmas break and other kinds of holidays. So, Bing, is there anything you want to add about it?
Yeah, I also want to add about COM, and we have been noticed that issue about COM, how challenging for the students in here, and program committee have a discussion even before the merger and after merger, how to lighting our student this low, especially during the summer semester we had the COM. The summer semester only like 10 days break, and those are COM. So program committee make a recommendation that COM used to be twice a year, now the COM is 3 times a year. As you can take it each semester break. You don't have to take it in the summer, but sometimes you cannot avoid because you progression. And also another solution for COM, and we break into sections. Used to get a COM is like 4 or 5 sessions whole you have finished. Now you can break out into, you can take it this time the 2 sessions, and next time another 2 or 3 sessions. So that's what we try to support the student learning processing. We understanding before the merger, we understand that a quarter semester, we have a lot of discussion with Judy and with all the regulation, and also we had a lot of discussion with the faculty, and our faculty, that's the decision we had to, otherwise we cannot get approval. So that's we how to support the faculty from the student, and also the faculty and program committee, how to support the student learning process.
So it's, I think we're making the best of what is basically a bad situation.
Feel free to chime in if you have additions or questions or follow-ups. Another question, what do you think the school has done to integrate the 2 campuses? What do you think, and where do you think we're falling short?
It's an excellent question, and I would say we haven't done enough. I think that when we looked at the merger, we had these grand plans about people would be able to take courses in other schools. We would open up all of the lectures and activities that are taking place on the various the campuses to each other, and that we would be able to look at how we could kind of bring traditional Chinese medicine and psychology more closely together. Lots and lots of ideas, and I would say we still have lots and lots of ideas, but what we've discovered is making them happen is not so easy. And some of it's logistic, some of it is the distance, some of it is where people are used to being. But I think this is something that we need to focus on a lot more. And one of the things that I want to do this year, in addition to starting to meet with various staff officers so that I get a better sense of what the experience is for staff across the school, I really want to start meeting with students on a regular basis, so I have better understanding, because I don't think my level is not high right now. Really understanding of the student experience and what kinds of needs there are, and what brought students here, and what's missing, so that we can start addressing some of those things. There is a tremendous amount of lectures and events that take place on the Mission Street campus. And I have to say that most of them, I don't even know that they're happening. And I'm in the building. So the things that we've tried to communicate them clearly are not working. And So we need to find new things, new ways. And I really want to hear from people any ideas that you all have about how we can make that work better. I know that people at Mission Street are really interested in learning more about what happens here and learning more about understanding, the medicine, and many of the programs on the Mission Street campus have no electives, so they can't come over here and take things. And I know how challenging it is for in terms of electives that you have, but it does seem like we should be able to figure out a way to have some cross-fertilization around the things that we're doing in the whole area of health and wellness, and in psychology and traditional Chinese medicine. And I think we want to be looking at how we develop some new programs, and whether they're certificate programs or shorter term kind of public programs things, but ways in which we can provide things for our alums that help them bridge some of this gap. So we're not where we want to be, and we need to keep working on it. So we have not achieved what we hoped we would. Yes.
Do you think it's possible to maybe start some kind of like a chat board between the two student bodies and post events that might be happening at either campus, and then people could ask, one population of the other, so what's this about? Do you know this instructor or this specialist or whatever? And then there could be a dialogue between those two student bodies who might know more about that subject.
I think that's a great idea, and I'm looking at both Yenny and Matt. Because when it comes to technology, I always ask Matt, how hard would that be to do? Can we do that?
I can talk to Ben, who administers Canvas, our online learning space, and see if we can create something that would include all students, or if that wouldn't work, we can create a listserv. We have a student listserv, but it's not always as easy to use. So yeah, I can ask Ben about the option using Canvas. I think that would be ideal. There's something called a cafe space, and I'm pretty sure you can add as many students as you want to it. So if we can get all of the CIIS, ACTCM student populations in there, that could be a good space to start sharing events. I like that idea.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That's great.
And I think exactly as Matt had said, the Canvas team has said that there is that capability, and ideally, what a dream has been for Michael, me, and other people who have been talking about how to connect students is what Sage can we continue to drill down. Also, if any of you are on the student listserv, you can see anything from hey, I'm promoting this fantastic event that's coming up, to I'm selling my textbooks, to I'm finding a house. That within a cafe space also, or if we could break it down into smaller segments, we would love to see what areas students are interested in, so that if there's a housing board specific, where there is a community that you could opt in, if there's something about events, so that it's really focused to what you're interested in. And if you have an idea, you can also propose a new space so that you can connect with other students in that area.
There's a hand over there, but I think also to talk to Kathy Littles, because I think that within a transformative studies program, which is all online, I think they do something like that, so that in their cafe space, people can set up kind of sub areas. So if you have a particular kind of interest, you can focus your attention on that space. Groups. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your vision. Actually, the last question was I was gonna ask you that question, but a couple of things I'm interested in seeing here, like career development, and including like classroom visual aids, some of the upgrade. I've seen a lot of instructors struggling with trying to get that to work, and I think other things I think it might help is that like community clinic and the CIIS, and so maybe students can actually come down and just maybe get some
Yeah, so we do have the ear acupuncture clinic at Mission Street Building. I come over here for acupuncture, which I love. And I'm trying to get more people to, to do that. And I get a little sense of how you learn how to do it as I listen to the faculty interact with the students. But Sandra is our
Hi, yeah, so I'm the career development manager at Summer Williams. Hi. I'm here every Monday, so you can set up time with me. I'm actually gonna start setting up time out in that, on the couch area out there, so people actually know, usually I'm in the administrative area. But the other thing is Georgette and Hannah and I brainstormed some ways in which we can reach out to you. We're gonna do more brown bags, we're gonna do more topics, I'm gonna have time in the classrooms. So last semester I showed up in Young's class, I believe it was. And so I'm gonna reach out to faculty. So you'll see more of me around, and you can always schedule one-on-one time with me, and we can make arrangements. Even if Monday is not available with you, I'll make some arrangements to meet with you, okay?
She's in my office
Yeah.
with me on Monday, so if you know where I am, she's there too.
Yeah.
So also, one of my dreams is for us to provide more support and for students in both for all of our students, but especially the people who are studying here and in the School of Professional Psychology, about how do you set up a practice? What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Because I think in all of this education, we're very focused on making sure you have the right skills to be a practitioner. And of course, that's the primary thing. But you're also setting up a business. And there's a lot that's involved in setting up a business and, and being an entrepreneur. And to really provide some instruction and support in how to do that. We have on our board of trustees a new trustee and as well as a continuing one. That's the area that they're most interested in, and want to bring people who have been, graduates who have been successful in setting up really interesting practices to talk about their experience in doing that and how they've done it. Because it's a whole different world, I think, now. In terms of the kinds of skills that one needs to have to really effectively set up a business, because there's technology skills that are involved, how you set up your website, and one of the women that I served on the ACOM commission with, talked about setting up her blog when she went from being full-time faculty to being full-time practitioner. Said the first thing that she did, in addition to setting up her website, was to set up her blog, and that she's constantly sending out things about, the medicine and how she works with gynecological problems, which is her area of specialization. And that's not something that we typically talk about in our regular classes. So we need to move into that, because I think everybody is going to have to learn how to do those things. Thank you.
I think just to be able to span a couple of broader other areas too, I'm going to jump to a finance question. And so can you give us an update on the budget and where we stand for the coming year? What are the biggest challenges you're facing?
Okay. So, as you probably heard, last September, we looked at a potential large deficit for a whole variety of reasons. We have closed the books on last year, and our unaudited results are a surplus of $63,000, which is really good news. $63,000 is not much of a surplus, but that's okay. It is a surplus. And so it means that our financial composite score is 1.57, which rounds up to 1.6. The financial composite score is a combined score that the U.S. Department of Education looks at in determining a school's financial viability. And they want schools to be at 1.5 or above. So this is important that we're ending the year above 1.5. So all of the various kinds of financial indexes that we need, either for the Department of Education or for WASC or for our the bank who holds our mortgages, all of those are coming out in really good shape. So that's really good news, and it's taken a lot of work on the part of many people to figure out how to make that possible and how to restructure the school to enable us to end the year in the black. My biggest concern looking into the next year, this year that's just starting, is that the number of units that students enroll in and where that's going to bring tuition income. So we won't know we won't have the full picture of where we are in fall until after add drop ends in September. And so we're looking on a weekly basis at registration and enrollment. This is a hard time for higher education. I've been on college campuses for a really long time. And when I started out as an assistant professor of sociology, we talked about how higher education hadn't changed for several hundred years. And we were doing just fine with a blackboard and a piece of chalk and a room in which, much like this, or either people were sitting at desks or they were sitting around in a circle. And that's how everybody did things. And in the state of California, there had been virtually no changes in the number of universities for a really long time. When I left WASC 15 years ago, there had been, I think, 2 schools that had applied for WASC approval that were new. So basically, it was pretty quiet in terms of change. And in the last 14 years, there have been something like 50 schools that have applied for WASC accreditation. Some of them schools of acupuncture, but some of them many brand new universities. Online education has expanded enormously. We have for-profit schools. We have schools that are looking at very different ways of educating people, and we have people questioning the way they never did before. Is a college education worthwhile? Is a graduate education worthwhile? So the whole field has really changed, and all universities are struggling in terms of what that means, both financially and in terms of the kind of education that they provide. When I was at the WASC meeting in April, I don't think there was anybody there that was not talking about financial challenges. Now, because Stanford didn't come to the meeting and University of California system was there, but they have huge financial challenges. Pomona wasn't there. So, there are a handful, maybe 2 handfuls of schools in our region that have huge endowments. But for most of us, we're needing to rethink how we organize ourselves, how we collaborate across programs, how we structure what we do, and the financial issues are very real for us. And for CIIS, we're looking at, we're working on a new strategic plan that's very focused on how are we going to increase revenue sources over the next 3 years, not just looking at what we provide in terms of degrees programs, but also in certificate programs, in public programs, in programs that we're doing with Chinese students, in our development outreach. We're looking at some certificates that could potentially have apps that go along with them that could be a source of income. We're really trying to think outside the box so that we can reduce the financial pressure on our academic programs.
So, let's see, just for breadth also, a student community space question, which this might be, actually, I will do another one that will be broad for all students and then get to the community space as ACTCM students might need to leave. The inclusion of seemingly arbitrary or unexpected fees in addition to the rising cost of CIIS tuition is challenging for students. The tech fee issue remains a source of frustration, especially when the computer lab continues to fail. Computers and or printers are not working on a regular basis. What is being done to correct ongoing technical issues of the lab? Are there any additional fees that students need to know before they're added? And the person who wrote this question just wanted to acknowledge special recognition should be given to the student workers who have provided extensive and exemplary service, problem solving, and support to fellow students trying to navigate various services.
So there are no new fees that have been envisioned. And we are certainly looking closely at tuition and what we do about that. We are very aware how challenging it is for people to pay their tuition. And we are very aware of how challenging it is for faculty and staff to continue to live and work in the Bay Area, and for students to continue to work and live and work in the Bay Area. The question about the computer lab, I think, highlights a broader communication challenge. So on one level, we have put a company in charge of all of our technology, US Wired, and they are in the process of upgrading our technology, evaluating it, and making recommendations about what we need to change and what we need to upgrade. And we recently had a ransomware attack, which kind of highlighted for us the importance of having that level of expertise, because there's no way that we could have been able to successfully deal with the ransomware all on our own. So it's as I was walking out of the building, I stopped the person for whom IT reports to him and said, "So what's been the problem in the computer lab and with computers not working?" And he said, "I don't know." So one of the things that we need to be working on is how we can hear directly from students when there is something that is not working or not working well. You might believe that we know something and that we don't actually know yet. And so if we can have ways to identify issues around something that's broken or something that interaction that you had with an office that went really well or one that didn't go well in real time, then we're much more able to address problems as well as to provide praise and support when something's gone really well. And so we've got a new piece of software that we're working on. It's called Blue. Matt knows much more about it than I do, but part of what we're trying to set that up to do is so that we can do quick turnaround surveys. So if you have an interaction with an office, that you get a survey, much like when I go to the dermatology clinic at UCSF, by the time I'm out of the building, I've already gotten a survey from them asking, how did it go? Did they take you on time? And, were they polite and all of those things? We need to do the same kind of thing so that we know what's going well and what's not going well. So we're trying to, we're in the process of implementing that system and then expanding it out to give us that kind of knowledge.
And how can the budget be maintained without treating people like numbers? For example, what was gained by terminating long-term, highly regarded staff members?
So the layoffs, I sigh because the layoffs were very difficult for all of us. They were difficult emotionally, they were difficult in terms of making the decisions. And we had, and so to do it, we had multiple people who were doing an analysis of where we had staffing that we could manage to do without. And we looked at the functions that people serve and ways in which we could achieve those functions in other ways. And our goal was to minimize disruption to students. And on a meta level, I would say that we achieved that. On a personal level, there certainly was, was disruption for particular individuals. But it was, as I say, we were looking at functions rather than at was somebody doing the job well or not well. And I don't know, it was challenging, and there were people that it was really difficult, to say goodbye to. I sat and spoke individually to each person that we were letting go, and really out of respect for them and what they had contributed to CIIS, and because we believe that that was the human right way to do it. And it was a horrible day. And I hope to never have to go through that again.
So I think I'll ask one more question, unless anyone else. So this is on community and student space. Based on the volume of unsolicited feedback received during the past academic year, there's still a need for mixed-use student space. Although students appreciate the existing areas set aside for the use, dining areas, meditation rooms, study spaces, the lounge and resting area function of room 212 in Mission Street has not been addressed.
Absolutely right. Maybe 8 years ago, we did a master plan for the building at Mission Street. And one of the things that we had talked to the architects about was wanting to have a lot of spaces in that building, really in all of our buildings, where people can gather. Student spaces, spaces where faculty can gather, spaces where student, faculty, and staff can gather. That was part of our vision. We haven't been able to make that happen, but we're certainly looking at how we can provide more space for students in all of the buildings. And so, part of the vision for doing the Wellness Center is to also have some space that would be dedicated to not just the counseling offices, but space that would be dedicated for the yoga classes and the other movement classes, and that would be also space that students could use when there isn't a class going on. So I would say we are in the process of trying to figure that out and figure out how we carve out some of those spaces in buildings that are very, very heavily used in terms of classes. Part of the challenge of the Bay Area real estate market is that every inch of space is so expensive that we end up utilizing things so heavily that we've got no lag time. And for the facilities people, one of their complaints is how can they ever get into a room to look at, if they ever have time to paint or do things, because there's always classes. And so we just don't have very much in terms of space that it's not already serving multiple uses, but we're certainly looking at it. I mean, do you want to add anything to that?
I think Judy really summarized a lot of what we are looking to know within ACTCM. Machine dedicating the space is something that we want to continue looking at. What spaces do we have for students, but how can we better engage you within that space also? Student council obviously has been so proactive in bringing the community together. How to do that with what we have, how to do that keeping our eye on how things will move in the future. And for Mission Street specifically also, and I think the notion of wellness, which is where a lot of the context of wellness comes from with the fee and what we want to offer is, it's not just about, can I get one-on-one psychotherapy? It's not just about, can I get, my yoga class when it's, a time that works in my schedule. We actually did a survey with last year's enrolled student survey that asked, what are the top, please rate what you would want in terms of wellness. And A Quiet Place to Rest was actually, I think, one of the top 3, if not the top 2 that students had marked. And so for us, it's really incorporating, that notion that Judy was saying also of where can you just get some downtime to be able to close your eyes. We know that a lot of students will spend, 8, 9, 10 hours here during a day. And if you don't have a quiet space where you can just close your eyes and not have to worry, too much about, just distractions, that is part of what we see as wellness. And that's one of the big issues that, as Judy had mentioned, we really want to incorporate so that for those of you that are physically here, we're taking care of all aspects.
Any last question from people in the room? Okay, well, I want to thank you for coming. I have some notion of how intense your schedule is. And so I really appreciate that you took the time when you could have been resting or sitting out in the sun or, to come here. And I look forward to other kinds of opportunities to really, meet you, learn more from you about your experience here and how we can, together work to take what is a very good school and make it an even better school. So thank you.
Thank you.